too much fun and lost track of time. Just give me 1 second to catch my breath. I want to thank you all for coming out tonight. As you know, I'm Congresswoman Jennifer McClellan. I'm going to take this off. I am now in my 3rd year representing you. My first full term, my 2nd term, I came in, as you recall, in a special election in February of 2023. And then everything that we learned in that first term got turned upside down in this 2nd term. But just to kind of highlight, I think this is my first town hall here. I've been down here and I've done town halls. We did mostly teletown halls last year just because the schedule is so crazy. But last Congress, I served on the Armed Services Committee and on the Science, Space, and Technology Committee. So was very involved in the National Defense Authorization Act, which is critically important to Fort Gregg Adams and to this region. Was able to bring back a significant amount of funding for the Tri-Cities area and community project funds. So about $3 million for water improvement projects in Petersburg, Prince George, and Colonial Heights. About $1 million in infrastructure improvement funds for the Ettrick train station. And some other things for the other part of the district. The district basically is the 15 localities from Charles City County to the North Carolina border. And I work very closely with the local governments in each of those areas. And I see many of our local government partners here tonight, so thank you all for being here. This Congress, I have new committee assignments and new responsibilities. So I'm on the Energy and Commerce Committee, which covers everything from healthcare to energy policy to the environment to communications. One of the former chairs used to joke that if it moves, it's energy, if it doesn't, it's commerce, and he would point to a map of the globe and say, that's our jurisdiction. But we cover everything from trade to manufacturing, energy, healthcare, communications, sports, film industry, anything other than sort of commodities and agriculture, but anything you think of that is in our economy in the business world other than ag. If it's grown on a farm, they deal with it in the agriculture committee, but once it leaves the farm, it comes to commerce, energy and commerce. On that committee, I'm on the energy subcommittee, I'm on the communications and technology subcommittee, but we can wave on to any committee, so I've spent a lot of time in the healthcare space. And because I'm on, that's what's called an exclusive committee, I'm not on armed services or science anymore, but I'm still heavily involved in those issues. So a lot of what I have been doing this year, though, is really defensive and responding to what's come out of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue since January 20th. And to take you back to January 20th, our term actually started January 3rd. But on January 20th, as I sat in the Capitol, listening to the President swear an oath to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States, which is pretty identical to mine, and listened to him give his inaugural address on Martin Luther King Jr. Day, a question kept running through my mind, which is the same question that Dr. King asked in the final year of his life. Where do we go from here? Chaos or community? And we've had going on 5 months now of chaos between the firing of federal employees, Virginia's second largest number of federal employees in the United States. Many of them fired with no notice, or maybe 15 minutes notice. Many of them fired by people who don't even know what they do. And for example, Elon Musk stood in the Oval Office and said mistakes were made. They accidentally fired the people who prevent Ebola, and then he laughed about it. It's not funny. The illegal freezing of federal funding that Congress appropriated. Virginia is in the top 5 recipients of federal funding. The tariffs that are on and off, have impacted everything from toys to technology, gasoline to groceries, healthcare and housing, and have hit our small businesses particularly hard. Then, right before the Memorial Day break, the House passed what they and the President call the One Big Beautiful Bill. I call it the One Big Ugly Bill, or the Billionaire Bonus Bill. Because what that bill did is strip, if it goes into law, it will strip health care away from 13.7 million Americans, hundreds of thousands of them here in Virginia, through cuts to Medicaid, which I'll go into in a minute, through a failure to extend the credits, to the tax credits to allow people to buy insurance under the healthcare exchange. It strips food assistance through SNAP benefits to 42 million Americans, 1/3 of them children. And we found out recently that because it adds, I think, $4 or $5 trillion to the national debt, under the pay-as-you-go laws, it would trigger automatic cuts to Medicaid. We don't yet know exactly how much, but Congressional Budget Office did flag that. It imposes a moratorium for 10 years on states and localities from regulating in any way artificial intelligence. It includes a provision that limits courts' ability to file injunctions when they find that the executive branch has overstepped its authority. It cuts, before coming here, I had a meeting with some housing advocates about the cuts to housing programs and the proposed cuts, and I'll talk about the proposed cuts in a minute, to HUD. And all of this is to extend the 2017 tax cuts, which benefit the top 10% earners. And what CBO says is, and they did the distribution tables, is it takes funding from the bottom 10% and gives it to the top 10%. So you can guess, based on how I'm describing this bill, I voted no. Not only did I vote no, but the healthcare, communications, environment, and energy provisions came through Commerce and Labor in a 26-hour hearing, where we started at 2 p.m. We did not get to the healthcare piece until around 11 p.m. They did that on purpose. When the bills passed each committee, they went to the Rules Committee to be combined together into one bill. They met at 1 a.m., the Wednesday before Memorial Day. Now, my caucus introduced over 500 amendments, including one that I had. That hearing, I think, was 20 hours. They started at 1 a.m. They ended at 10:30. And then the majority introduced what they called a manager's amendment, which was a brand new bill that they then took to the floor and began debating, and we voted on at 7 a.m. before the Congressional Budget Office could score this new version. Most of what I already went through is in the new version. And so I am very concerned about the cuts that have already happened, either through DOGE and the administration, the cuts that are in this bill. But now we begin the fiscal year 2026 budget process. Our fiscal year is October 1 to September 30th. And so the proposed budget that we are getting ready to take up has even more cuts, and that's where the bulk of the cuts to HUD and many other agencies will be on top of what's already happened. So part of why I'm having more town halls more frequently is because of how much has happened so fast. And my job is not only to represent you and be your voice in Congress, but to inform you about what's happening in Congress. Because we know people get their information from a wider variety of sources than ever before. But sometimes there's no substitute for that face-to-face, I'm talking to you and then you're gonna ask me questions. And so we are gonna continue, whether through teletown halls, whether through in-person town halls, whether through virtual town halls, we will have more frequent town halls this session. In the meantime, you can stay up on what I'm doing through, I have an email newsletter, and you saw my team out front at the table, and everybody in these polo shirts. We have, and so on the brochures outside, you can see how to sign up for my newsletter every Monday, except today. Every Monday I send out a newsletter with the top 2 or 3 things that happened the week before. Every Friday, we do a reel on social media with highlights of what happened during the week. And then sort of real time, you can follow what we're doing in the office on X, Instagram, Facebook, Threads, Blue Sky, and YouTube. That's about all I can handle right now. But we are starting to learn, like, when I had my teletown hall, and there were 11,000 people who signed up for the teletown hall in February, we found out real time that people were talking about it on Reddit. So we lurk on Reddit, but we don't post on Reddit yet. But we're learning all of the different, when I grew up, I think probably a lot of people in this room, I remember the days when you got all of your news from 3 TV stations, a morning and an afternoon paper, a radio show, and that was it. Now we are having to meet people where they are in a much wider variety of spaces. So that is, I'm more interested in talking about what you want to talk about, so that's sort of my high-level overview of what's been going on. I know my team put a whole bunch of pieces of paper in front of me that I'm going to ignore right now. But I think we're going to jump right into your questions. And we have found the most efficient way. Did everybody who wants to ask a question get a ticket when you came in? We have found the most efficient way to do this is just through the tickets. And we will get to as many questions as we can. Hopefully we will get to everybody's question. If not, I think, do we have cards?
Yes.
We also have cards, so if we don't get to your question or you don't want to ask it in person, if you write your question out on the card and put your contact information, we will get you an answer that way. The last thing I want to do before taking your questions is just say thank you. This is the best job I've ever had. Even as hard as it is right now, because, and I'm really happy to be having this town hall here at Virginia State. I grew up on this campus. My parents worked here. My dad was a professor, and my mom ran the TRIO programs. And I went to nursery school across the street and in Gandy Hall when they used to have it. I went to kindergarten and first grade in the lab school that is where the bookstore now stands. So I literally grew up on this campus, and I grew up listening to my parents tell stories of what their life was like growing up during the Depression, growing up under Jim Crow. They saw the best of government and they saw the worst of government. And I decided at a very young age that at its best, government is a force that helps people and solves problems. And at its worst, it's a force that oppresses some for the benefit of others. And I decided I want to be a part of making government that force that helps people and solves problems. And that's what I wake up every day asking myself, what problem can I solve today and who can I help? It's harder right now. It is harder. But I am extraordinarily grateful that you all have given me the honor to represent you as not just your congresswoman, but as a history maker, as the first Black woman elected to Congress, or representing Virginia at all in Congress, in the former capital of the Confederacy. That shows we've made a lot of progress, but we have a long way to go to protect that progress and extend that progress so that the ideals upon which this country was founded become true for everybody. And so with that, I say thank you. I take our first question from, I'm just gonna read the last three, from 079.
Oh, I knew.
Okay. And if you could stand up and tell us your name. Excuse me, we have a microphone coming.
Oh, you gonna hold it?
Oh, okay, that's nice.
It's special. Good evening, everyone. My name is Kelly Lipscomb, and I work at the federal prison. Yes, my pay was cut 10%. As a drug treatment specialist, and I've been there for 16 years. I recently graduated from the Virginia Leadership Institute, the Rural Leadership Institute. And with that, we have an impact project that we are supposed to propose. So I live in my address. Hi, how are you doing? And my impact project is because I work in the prison system, I see a lot how mental health is affected. And I'm also a cheerleading coach, and a lot of my girls struggle with suicidal ideation, trauma, anxiety, so on and so forth. My proposal is for a community development center that focuses on mental health, as well as, this is a reach, I want an indoor pool. And so it's benefits with the mental health with swimming, and African American children drown 5% more than others are likely to drown. So my question, I'm sorry for my long,
That's okay.
Given the concerning statistics about African American children's drowning rates, particularly in underserved rural areas, I would like to ask you for your support in ensuring that the proposal for a community development center in our rural county includes not only a swimming pool, but also a comprehensive water safety program. Would you advocate for federal or state funding to help reduce drowning incidents by offering accessible swimming lessons, CPR training, and water safety education? And what steps could we take together to ensure that this center provides what I'm asking for?
Thank you for that question. And yes, but So under, on the official side, in my official capacity, under the House rules, I am only allowed to advocate for federal, federal programming, federal funding, federal legislation. I can, in my personal capacity, just like anybody else, express my opinion to local and state government officials. But I have to make clear to them this isn't, not an official side ask just because of the ethics rules, because they don't want us to unduly influence state and local governments. So with that caveat, yes, I think that is a very good idea. I think that's very necessary. And do you all know why African Americans tend, I know you know, tend to not be able to swim? Segregation. Because for a long time, we weren't allowed in public pools, we weren't taught how to swim, and there's sort of a lingering fear, frankly, about learning how to swim. So I think that is very important. And mental health, we are working really hard to get rid of the stigma around mental health, because it's health, just like cardiovascular health. And a lot of underlying issues around homelessness, around crime, around gun violence, homelessness are all rooted in mental health issues that have gone untreated. And so I thank you for focusing your attention on that issue. All right, 094. Okay.
Okay, my name is Nicole Sobryan, known mainly as Nicole Angel, I'm grassroots activist. My question is about Gaza.
Gossip?
Yeah,
okay.
Gaza.
Oh, Gaza, okay.
Yes, what are we doing to pull the plug on my tax dollars going to genocide children?
Amen.
Well, I have not seen a funding bill right now that would put any additional funding into.
The big beautiful bill which increases the military-industrial complex.
Yes, it does increase funding for the Defense Department and defense funding, but there's usually separate funding that goes to specific foreign countries. That is not in the big bill. Remember, I voted no on that. But I have not seen lately a bill that would increase any additional aid into Israel. And if I see one, I will look very closely to make sure that it is not being used to go into or do anything in Gaza. I do think that funding for the defensive dome is appropriate, but I do have serious concerns about additional funding for offensive weapons and how they are used. 081.
Good evening, Congresswoman McClellan.
I still answer to that.
Well, I'm just leaving the Walter E. Washington Convention Center. So we are having, this week is our mid-year conferences with our legislators. I'm a real estate broker in town. And Congresswoman McClellan, you had me at the Senate building in Virginia about 6 years ago, to talk about affordability with housing. And, so when we are working with law enforcement, firefighters, educators, healthcare workers, public sector employees, we are still at a quagmire as it relates to affordability. So, of course, we're in DC all week talking about this. I left there after committee meetings today to come here to speak directly with you because I know of your efforts when you were a Virginia senator. in this regards. How do we, if the solution is build them smaller, we still have affordability. If we have families that are husband, wife, son and daughter, or we have single parent, son and daughter, we are still struggling with housing. And we're struggling from this regard. So in 2020, the Virginia Realtors stopped showing median home sale prices in Virginia in March of 2024 because the number reached above 430. So that's the median price. We stopped it because we knew when we put this data out, it scared potential homeowners. So how do we combine these efforts to say, from a legislative, because the builders are saying legislation is causing us to raise prices. I think that's crap. I really do. But in a lot of this effort, the only way we're going to get this wheel to turn forward is through legislation. I will yield that. Yeah. So how do we now stay from a federal, state, and local? Because it's wrong. We cannot just say this is a federal issue. It starts local. Yeah. And there's a state piece to this, but there's also a federal piece to this. Can you address that? Thank you.
I can, and I have good news and bad news. So this November will be the 20th anniversary of when I was first elected to the General Assembly. And 20 years ago, we were focused on affordable housing. And I did roundtable discussions, and the bottom line is that wages have not kept up with the cost of construction, period. End of sentence. And to address it, you've got to subsidize either the building or the purchase. And at the local, state, and federal level, we've done a lot of good work through the Housing Trust Fund, through incentives for, and I'll sort of both on the rent side and the purchase side. So we've done tax credits or incentives and grants for first-time home buyers to help with the closing costs. We have done rental assistance. We have done tax credits to help with building affordable housing. And even with all of the work that we have done, and we've done a significant amount of work, the cost of construction outpaces wages, and the supply is going down. That's an economics 101. When you have a supply and demand problem, prices go up. Here's the bad news. This was the meeting I left before coming down here. The president's proposed budget zeroes out a lot of that funding. According to Virginia Housing, if the president's proposed budget is adopted, Virginia will lose $750 million in federal funding for housing. What the president proposes is block grants to localities, and like many other things, well, we're just going to return this responsibility back to the states and the localities. Here's the problem: states and localities can't print money. Localities in Virginia have basically one source of income: property taxes. The state basically has income taxes. So the state is dealing with that, and the cuts to Medicaid and healthcare, and the cuts to education funding, and the cuts to SNAP benefits and food assistance. And they can't make it up. And the cuts to education. And so I'm glad that you all have your advocacy day today, because you need to be louder than ever right now. Hold the line on what we have. Because if that budget goes through and Virginia loses $750 million to fund affordable housing, both on the rent side and the purchase side, and on the building side, people are gonna go homeless. And that's already happened. Like, that was already a crisis as we saw a lot of the funding that came in response to COVID being wound back. That's the bad news. The good news, though, is you all have the power through your voice to say, this is something we want our tax dollars spent on. And I'm probably gonna have a whole lot of bad news for y'all tonight, and I do apologize for that, but this is the reality that we're facing. Virginia cannot make up $750 million. It can't. And I see, just from the head nods, our localities can't make that difference either. So we really keep plugging on. I mean, you're preaching to the choir here, but even me hearing it is helpful because it helps me be louder on your behalf in Washington.
Can I just add to Congressman McClellan? We, today, our RPAC, we address this. RPAC is a collective voice, as you know, and it's a collective voice that prints itself or markets itself as neutral. And so where you find individuals such as myself who told others this afternoon, I'm leaving at 3 because I want to drive back home to meet with Congresswoman McClellan tonight. There are others who are not as loud as me. And just the way I'm talking without a mic right now, I did this at Washington Convention Center today. And until there is a solution, what we're seeing in Henrico County. So Henrico County is saying, we will offset some of your soft costs. Until these solutions are proposed, whereas Henrico puts a trust fund in place that you referenced, and the goal, the effort, is to reduce soft cuts. But then on top of introducing that, you have to still do due diligence to make sure those soft costs are being given to the end user.
Yeah.
And so there is so much of bureaucracy in what we're seeing today, because people just think because a house appraises, the next one is going to appraise for more. There is no template of once we give these trust dollars or these trust funds out here to these localities to distribute and make sure we're reducing. There is no follow through.
Now that's going to state issue, and we can address that offline and make sure that the right folks in the General Assembly are taking action on that. But let's make sure one of the folks in the blue, I see Charity heading your way. We'll make sure to connect with you on that. All right, 082.
Hey, good evening, Congressman.
Good evening.
Congresswoman, thank you. My name is Lance Lalonde. My wife and I live in Colonial Heights. First off, I want to thank you for being my representative. I appreciate that. I get your newsletter weekly. I read it, I digest it, and I can tell you do your homework. I appreciate it very much. 2 questions. You can answer one or the other, or both if you have time. First one is, can you cite any legislation where you have maybe gone against advice of your party or your caucus and joined in bipartisan with Republicans for any legislation that you felt benefited your constituents as opposed to the party?
Yes, actually, a lot of what we do is bipartisan, believe it or not. Especially when we come in on what's called a fly-in day, and there are bills that we vote on at 6:30 p.m. They're mostly the bipartisan bills, and I've introduced a lot. And I think the most recent example, I think it's called the Support Act, It's a bill that focuses a lot on addressing substance abuse disorders, and particularly the opioid crisis. And long story short, it's a bipartisan bill, but the way the Republicans on the Energy and Commerce Committee put it forward, they were going to put forward only part of the bipartisan bills that passed and not all of them. And there were a lot of amendments we wanted that didn't get added. And there were a lot of my caucus members who said that because of that, they were going to vote against this bill. And my attitude was, I'm voting for it, because even if it isn't perfect, it solves, it goes a long way to solve this problem. So that's the most recent example. But I always ask myself, if there's legislation before, is it better than status quo or not? And if the bottom line answer is it's better than status quo, and it doesn't have unintended consequences, or, they do, honestly, and Democrats do it too when we're in charge. Sometimes you have these like gotcha bills that look like they're good ideas, but when you really read the fine print, they're not, or they don't do what they say they're going to do. And sometimes I vote against those. But for the most part, I'll ask myself, is this bill advancing a solution to a problem and is better than status quo? And if so, I'm going to vote for it.
Thank you. Okay, second question.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts of term limits for U.S. Congress?
I think we have term limits. They're called elections. I don't like arbitrary term limits, because I have seen in other states that have adopted them where they have no institutional knowledge. They have no institutional expertise among legislators. They rely solely on lobbyists. And I did a lot of work in the education space. I was a member of the Southern Region Education Board. And Oklahoma had very short term limits, and it seemed like in Oklahoma, every time they passed an education reform bill, before they could get to the point where it's going, you got all new legislators in, and they're all like not wedded to it because it wasn't their bill. And so I don't like arbitrary term limits. I trust the people when they say you've represented me long enough to vote you out. All right, 088. Yes.
Actually, I have three. My name is Pam, and I work at the VA hospital. I work at the VA hospital, and I am a veteran. So I see both sides of the government. One of my questions is about the RIF that's coming up and the effects that it's going to have on the VA. I've heard a couple of different things, and this is from our organizational leadership, that Richmond VA may not be affected as much as originally thought. We already are having a nursing shortage. I am a nurse, and I'm proud about that. And I'm highly concerned that if the RIF does affect nursing, then it will affect the care that our veterans receive, and that I receive, because I get my care at the Richmond VA hospital. And so I want to know more about that, and are there plans to downsize some of the other VA hospitals that are maybe not as productive?
The short answer is we don't know yet. They don't tell us what they're doing until they issue the order. And then even then, they don't always think through what they've done, and when we push back, they back off. So for example, when the first hiring freeze came, it was all employees, and then they figured out, well, not doctors and nurses, but we pushed back. And I led a letter among the Virginia delegation saying, well, the support personnel are also necessary to provide quality care because of, you need clean room. And so we are very closely monitoring what they do, but until they actually do it, like say this is what, and they usually give us 15 minutes notice. until we actually see their plans, we don't know, but we are monitoring that very carefully. And Bianca here handles a lot of my constituent services issues around the VA. And so she is, and Ramon, who is my LA and DC, who handles veterans issues, are very closely monitoring this. And as soon as we see something, we're gonna push back. I am opposed to any cuts to funding or workforce at the VA, period. Because you've already pointed, we're already not meeting our veterans' needs.
Right.
And so I'm gonna oppose any further cuts that make that problem worse. And so we got a lot of questions. Remind me your number, 82?
88.
88. So I'll come back, but we got a lot of questions up here, and I wanna try to get through those before I get you a second one, if that's okay. And if we don't get to everybody, like we will do it offline. And these are not random. Here we go. We didn't do a good job of mixing these up. Okay, 091. Yes. Thank you.
Let me see how, okay, make sure it's not too loud. My name is Russell Bills, and I am a retired clinical social worker. I'm from this area. I too sort of grew up on Virginia State campus. My father played football here, and so we have deep roots to this area, even though I went to Norfolk State, the real big state.
Those are fighters. All right.
Little step.
One comment and then my question.
Okay.
And this is also sort of a question. There's a lot of information out there right now about the fact that the Democrats are currently not really putting up a real big fight about what's going on in terms of all of the changes. And I think there's a lot of miscommunication about what exactly can be done by our congresspeople.
Yeah.
Right now, the Supreme Court majority is primarily conservative. Republicans hold the House, they hold the Senate, and they hold the White House. That severely limits the effectiveness of our party in terms of making actual laws. My question though is, how can we continue to educate the public so that they understand that even though we're not the party in power, that we are attempting to address those needs and to come up with a coherent strategy to address it? Because I'm seeing a lot of arguments back and forth between moderates and more progressive parts of the party, where they're saying, well, we need to focus on nuts and bolts table issues. We need to get back and get back to the working class and get away from, quote, identity politics. I'm Black. That's a part of my identity. So I can't get away from it. And it impacts me directly. But my biggest question is, how do we educate the public in general about what we need to do?
So
Okay, I'll let it go with that.
Lily, so because I'm here, in my official capacity, I can't answer the campaign politics side because that's against the ethics rules. I can talk about the caucus and what we are doing in Congress. And you're right, a big part of it is, civics education in America is not what it needs to be. And we are trying to help with that at the federal, state, and local level. But part of it is by doing things like this and using our platforms to help educate you all, and then you all can go out and spread the message. But you're absolutely right, math is math. We have 204, we just had somebody pass away, so we have 214 Democrats, you need 218 to pass anything. So we need 4 Republicans to join us to pass something or to stop something. And on the Senate side, it's a little bit higher margin. Now there are procedural mechanisms that we can use to slow things down or to make points. And so, for example, that 26-hour hearing, we knew every single amendment that we introduced was going to be rejected, but we introduced it anyway because we wanted the American people to see, we are fighting for you. We are trying to stop these cuts. They're going to hurt you. And we want you to know what they're doing. And some of the amendments we put in were on provisions that the Republicans didn't even know were in the bill until we introduced the amendment. So we can do that. But we have to just use our platform to get information to the people. And that's harder than ever before because, and I'm a huge nerd, you probably figured it out. I look at the data. And now, if you think of the world as news receivers and news seekers, everybody in this room is probably a news seeker. But not everybody that votes is a news seeker. They get their news when they're looking for their sports information, or they're looking for recipes, or they're looking for, soap opera recaps, or whatever. And so and it's not on TV anymore. It's not in newspapers anymore. So our challenge is, how do we communicate to both news seekers and news receivers? And that's very hard, but it's by doing things like this. It's by meeting you where you are and then giving you information to help you inform other people. But I remind people all the time, math is math. And no amount of wishing it away is going to change that you need 218 votes to get anything passed in Congress or to stop a bill. Thank you for that. Okay, I keep forgetting I have the tickets. 085. Yes.
Hello, thank you for spending your time here, answer questions. My name is Xavier Isaac. I'm an alumni at Virginia State. I'm a currently graduate student at George Mason. My question is more so like a foreign policy one. My question is just 4 days ago, the Israeli government, as led by the most right-wing government in Israeli history, the Knesset, they have recently approved expansion of Israeli settlements in the West Bank, specifically 22 that they're trying to legalize. Even though they are illegal under current international law, especially under the Fourth Geneva Convention of Article 49. And I was wondering, would you condemn those expansion of settlements, which I believe threaten stable peace within the West Bank? And if so, would you be in favor of trying to reinstate sanctions on the government officials that are responsible for legalizing these settlements?
I do think that the settlements, expanding those settlements is very dangerous, not just to the people in the West Bank, but to the national security and stability of Israel and the region. And so yes, I would have to, I don't feel comfortable giving a blanket, I support sanctions until I see the details of what the sanctions would be. And so I'm not comfortable answering that part of your question in a hypothetical, but I do believe that the United States needs to hold our allies accountable, just like we hold everybody else accountable. And we need to use whatever levers we have to ensure that they are fostering long-term stability and peace in the region, and that they are ensuring that innocent civilians, no matter who they are or where they live, don't get caught in the crossfire. And I think that's not always happening. All right, 83. Yes.
Okay, hi, I'm so glad to see you again.
Good to see you.
And My name is Janice Johnson. I'm an outreach worker for Petersburg, Southside Virginia, and Dinwiddie. So I work with homeless people. And so that is my passion. Each one of us here tonight are gonna go home tonight. We're going to rest in our beds. There are so many people out here now that are homeless, and there are layers of homelessness. People used to think of the homeless person as a guy who was on the street with a bag. That's not anymore. I have about 10 to 15 calls a day. And right now it's at crisis level because so many people are being evicted. The Medicaid crisis procedure has changed. That was keeping some of the people in the motels. That's gone away. There are elders, there are parents with children, there are singles, there are people that are suffering from mental health crises. So there's all of these people. And when you talk to somebody, I talked to a lady, she was working 15 years. She's in her car with her 3 kids. She has nowhere to go. So when they call, you know, there's not a shelter in our area. There's a private shelter in Jarrett. And so this not only affects the people in our region, but this is a countrywide thing. There is a commercial that I love. I don't know that you guys have seen it. It's a car commercial, and the guy's selling cars, and he says, I can make a deal with you. Don't tell me what you can't do, tell me what you can do. And so when I talk to people, I ask them, what can you do? So that's my question to you.
What can I do? Thank you. I can be loud. So I'm one of the more junior members, especially on energy and commerce. I'm one of the more junior members, and I view my role as being the storyteller. To make sure that my colleagues know, if you vote for this bill, this is the impact you're gonna have, not just on my constituents, but yours. And especially for all of Virginia. There are 2 Virginians on energy and commerce. There's me and Morgan Griffith, who's a Republican from Southwest Virginia. And I also remind people, what you're doing on this bill is not happening in a vacuum. So the same people that are gonna lose their health insurance because of Medicaid cuts are the same ones that are gonna lose SNAP benefits, are the same ones that are gonna lose rental assistance. And on and on and on. And so I can use my voice to connect the dots on how what they're doing is gonna impact people. I can then use my voice and my platforms to inform you all. Here's what's happening. Now you tell me what you want me to do. Or you tell me how you're being impacted. And if anybody, I'll just say, if anybody has been impacted either from funding cuts or workforce cuts, we're collecting those stories and we're telling them on the House floor, on the Senate floor. The only person who can sue on behalf of Congress is the Speaker. He's not doing that. But I can help support organizations that find people who have standing to sue through amicus briefs or help connect those organizations to people who would have standing to sue. On the unofficial side, I can help support candidates that will make a change. But that's as much as I can say on that. So I think for me, I view my job as being your voice in Washington and empowering you to use your power.
There's one other question. For the programs that are out here now that still may have funding, for example, the voucher programs, right? Is there any way that you can facilitate, because you know they take so long, it's like a bottleneck when people are applying. They have the vouchers, but it takes forever to navigate that system.
So to the extent they are dealing with federal agencies, yes. To the extent they are dealing with state or local agencies, we can point them to the person that can help there. And I'll that's to your other point about what I can do. Anybody that has a problem with a federal agency, from the VA to Social Security, you name it, I have caseworkers that can help navigate those problems. But we are not allowed, and we are only allowed under the ethics rules to help people who are our constituents, but we can point you to other people if you're not. And we are only allowed to do federal agencies, but we can point you to the state and local officials who can help with those. Thank you. 93.
Good evening, everyone. Congresswoman McClellan. I, too, like many of the individuals that have spoke before, am a government employee, much like Ms. Lipscomb over there. Hey, Kelly. I work for the Bureau of Prisons, and so we go through this daily, the not knowing whether we're going to be able to keep our job, if we're going to have a job tomorrow. I don't want to be redundant, but I do have a question as far as what is the call to action? What can we do to actually help this situation? Of course, we know that we're here. We can't change that. Is the plan that we're waiting 2 years for Congress to flip? Is it we're trying to work for another 4 years? I guess my biggest concern is us getting the information out to see what the party is actually doing to combat this. So again, what is the specific call to action?
So on the official side, I'm limited in how I can answer that question. In my unofficial capacity, I can answer more fully. And this is all based, honestly, to keep me from getting arrested or fined a whole lot of money, because they don't want us using taxpayer money for political or call to action things. So that's why I'm being that careful. But short term, I can't be your voice if I don't know what's happening on the front lines. And so I need you all to share with me, either through my website, through email, through phone calls, what you are seeing, how the actions of the administration or Congress are impacting not only your ability to do your job, but the mission of your job. And the more I get that, the better I am at doing my job. Now, I am one of 435 members of Congress. But everybody that lives in my district knows people that live in other districts. And you can also empower them to call their member of Congress. And you can make sure, I think the people ultimately have the power to tell us what you do or don't want your taxpayer dollars spent on, what you do or don't want the federal government doing, if you do or don't like what you see the administration is doing. And then it's up to us to take that and actualize it. Because there's short-term plan and there's long-term plan. Short-term plan is mitigate the harm. If you can't stop it, you mitigate it. And again, this dialogue helps me do that. At the end of the day, if you don't like the people that are representing you and what they do, you have the power to do something about that. And that's as far as I can say. And everything that the federal government is doing impacts state and local governments. And we got elections in Virginia every year, and that's as far as I can speak on that right here. I get asked a lot, what's the project 2027? Or what's the project 2029? Well, the occupant of the White House is not changing in 2027. And so the plan for 2027 has to be mitigate the harm. And it's up to the people whether we're doing that at 218 or not. But we know the problems that are facing our communities. We know we were making progress addressing some of them, and we know some of the things we were doing to address them weren't working, but now everything's been turned upside down, and so areas where we've made progress, we gotta rebuild. And there is a plan and process to do that when we have the power to do it. In the meantime, my job is to help convince my colleagues in the other caucus that what they're doing is harming their constituents and mine. And these conversations help me do that. And you know, there are things, there are votes that some of my colleagues have made that I know they don't want to make. I know they don't. They do it anyway. And my job is not to shame them, but to say, like, here's what that vote means for not just my people, but yours. And you all help me do that. All right, 87.
Not quite 87, but
Good
afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm Starry Jordan, and I have a question that concerns everybody in this room. Everybody, you mentioned a few phrases ago, Social Security. Social Security affects all of us, and it affects people like him even more than it affects me, because he's paying into Social Security, but he doesn't know if he's going to get anything out of it. Now, the federal government has borrowed money from Social Security a few times. I don't know how many times, but I know it's been more than once. And they've never paid any of it back. Now, if I were going to be campaigning for an office, that would be my single campaign phrase: restore the borrowed money to Social Security. Now, you'll be running for office real soon again. Now, will you adopt that campaign, that you're going to pay back Social Security?
A good bit of it has actually been paid back, and the trust fund is solvent and is not being rated right now. But yes, I actually think we should have a lockbox on it, so that we can't borrow from it ever again. And yes, I would happily campaign on that.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you. 90. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. I'm Terry Moore. I am a retired federal worker, and I have lots of concerns about the current administration, because I read today that Trump has asked the Supreme Court to allow him to continue with the mass layoff. If we think we got a problem with mental health, lay off these people, and you're gonna really see a difference. Also, one of the other things I have concern about is all the pardons that he has done with all these criminals. And I want to know, what do you think about what he has done with pardons? I don't know if you can answer it.
I can answer that.
But I think it's a distraction, and I think part of it might be for that airplane he got from Qatar, and also his military parade that he won on the 14th of June. Okay, so I just wanted to know, what did you think about all the pardons that he has done?
So I was on Al Sharpton's show Sunday. He asked me the exact same question. Generally, I am a believer in pardons when someone who was convicted of something they actually did repents and shows that they are a different person. I am all for pardons when someone has been wrongfully convicted or who was denied justice through either ineffective counsel or something similar to that. And I did a lot of work at the state level trying to help people get pardons in those circumstances. I do not believe that someone who shows no remorse who takes no responsibility for what they have done, but is loyal to one person, or has their mother make a campaign contribution, deserves a pardon. If you pardon someone, we don't have time for me to go through all of it, but I'm gonna just take the January 6th pardons. On January 6th, people tried to take by force what they didn't win at the ballot box for the second time in American history, and in the process, beat Capitol Police officers and put some of them in a position where they committed suicide and have shown no remorse and don't even admit they've done anything wrong. And I think it's a disgrace that they got pardoned. And I think it's a disgrace that somebody who violates their oath of office to embezzle money and shows no remorse can get pardoned. And I don't even remember the guy whose mother paid the campaign contribution. I don't remember what he did, but like, pardons should not be for sale. So I can't think of a single, I mean, maybe there's one, I don't know, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. I can't think of a single pardon that he has given this term that I would support. I think many of them, his idea of justice is, if you are loyal to me or you pay me, you get pardoned, and everybody else, you're out of luck. And I think that's not justice. All right, 89. Okay. One or two more, and we will get the rest of you offline. 89.
Thank you for taking my question. I think I have a good question here. I hope so. I used to know this when I was in the Boy Scouts 100 years ago, but I'll read it. It says, we the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. And so, as we talk about some of the things that you mentioned earlier, what our government is doing or not doing, we're supposed to have three co-equal branches of government. But it seems as though one has gone rogue, one branch has gone rogue. And to your point you made just a couple of minutes ago, that you have colleagues on the other side who want to vote one way, but vote another way. So how is it that we can have any faith in this system when the system, the way it is designed, not only is not working, but is for sale, is corrupt, and what becomes our role in getting these things done? You mentioned voting, yet we have voter suppression going on, we have gerrymandering going on, just all kinds of things that are against what is actually supposed to happen and what is going to happen. And so I'm with this young man here when it comes down to, what do we do? We have a Supreme Court unanimously voted to bring back someone who was denied due process, who sits in an El Salvadorian prison. And it's not being, there's no teeth in it. The person who has the power, or the people who have the power to do it, just said, I'm not gonna do it. I remember during the first term, within the first year, I said to my wife, I says, what'll happen? Because everybody says, well, we just have 4 years to do this and we can vote the person out. What happens if the person just decides, I'm not going? What mechanism or mechanisms are in place to make sure the system is going to work? Many people will argue with you now that we're in a dictatorship. Democracy is gone. So I'm back to the same question that has been posed at least 3 times. What do we do?
So our republic is being stress tested to the breaking point, and I don't know if we're gonna survive. I have faith that we will survive because so far, I'll push back a little bit. Technically, the president has not violated a Supreme Court order yet. He's interpreted it differently, and that interpretation is up on appeal. Now, if he does violate a court order, I don't know what happens because it's the administrative branch that enforces it. At the end of the day, so far the courts have done their job and he's responded. And for the except for that one instance, he has backed off or he has appealed it and they're still making their way through the court system. Ultimately, it's the people. Ultimately, the people have to decide if our republic survives. Not Congress, the people. And at the end of the day, I will give him credit. My comms coach always says, find one nice thing you can say about the president. So this is my one nice thing I'll say. There are other things I could say, but when he gets pushback, he retreats. And when he gets pressure, he retreats. That pressure comes from the people and the market and the courts and sometimes even through Congress. So while some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle may not say anything publicly, they are saying things behind the scenes that have caused him to back off. But at the end of the day, the pressure has to come from the people. And there are multiple ways you can do that, and I've given you some. If you don't like what your elected officials are doing, you have a responsibility to speak up to them directly and indirectly. And I have seen so far, when that happens, there's a reaction. Honestly, I don't think he likes being president this time. He said he's not gonna run again. I believe him, because he doesn't enjoy it. But if he decides, I'm not gonna leave, then the people are gonna have to make sure he leaves. I'm not saying through violence, but people can file lawsuits. People can protest. And every time we have made progress as a nation, and when our republic has not worked the way the ideal says it should, it has been the people, through voting, even when there's voting suppression, through protest, through showing up in the halls of government, making their voice heard, that has turned things around. It's been worse than it is now. I stand before you as someone whose great-grandfather gained the right to vote and then lost it. I took my oath of office to preserve, protect, and defend that document that you just read on the Bible that my father kept his poll tax receipt in. Whatever obstacles were put in their way, they said, I'm voting anyway. And they didn't say, and I'm not saying you said this, but you got me on my soapbox now. They didn't say, well, I don't like your position on this, so I'm gonna stay home. They didn't say, I don't like the way you talk on this TV show, so I'm gonna stay home. They said, you are going to be the head of a government that appoints judges. You're going to be the head of a government that appoints cabinet members and other officials who are going to impact my day-to-day life. And I am going to have my perspective heard in this government by, of, and for the people. Because in a government by, of, and for the people, the only people whose perspective is heard and therefore their needs are met are the ones that participate. It's a two-way street. It's a two-way street. My job is to make sure you know what your government is doing. Your job is to tell me what you want your government to do. And not to give up on it. Because next year we have an opportunity to either celebrate 250 years of an idea that never happened on this earth before, or to mourn that it couldn't make it to 250. And Benjamin Franklin said that. When he walked out of the hall and was asked, what did you wrong? He said, a republic if you can keep it. It's not up to Donald Trump whether we keep this republic. It's up to every single one of us. If we want to keep this republic and we act on it, we will. If we throw up our hands and say, well, it's not working, it's not perfect, it's never worked, we lose it. I'm doing my part. And I'm gonna end with this. John Lewis, who my one regret is I didn't get to serve in Congress with, he said in his final words, democracy is not a state. It is an act that requires every generation to do its part to build the beloved community. Democracy in and of itself is not the point. It is what you do with it. Are you going to use democracy to build safe communities or not? Are you going to use democracy to make sure that people who are hungry get fed or not? Are you going to use democracy to make sure the sick get care or not? Are you going to use democracy to care for your neighbor or not? Every single one of us have to commit to what that answer is going to be. And it's hard, I know, I get it. And it's never been perfect. But if we give up on it, we are lost. I don't want any other kind of form of government, because I see what's happening everywhere else. It's not any better. Ultimately, we have the power to decide. Is that man in the White House going to end our republic or not? And if we work together to build community in the face of chaos, we will make it as a country, and we will make it as a community. So if I did not get to your question, write it on the card or submit it on the website or send it an email. We will get you an answer. And thank you all very much for taking the time on a beautiful June night. Thank you.
If anybody would like a photo